Hello class. In this video we are going to be doing the weekly report inside Ubuntu. There is already a video like this in Windows, but since the steps are a little different in our workflow in Ubuntu, I figure we'll make a video here as well, just to avoid issues in the future. So the first thing that we're going to do is, sorry about that. Okay, so I want to go into my repository real quick. And I want to make sure that I have a folder called weekly reports, right? So I'm going to create one for weekly reports, enter, right? And over here, you should put all the files for weekly reports 0 should go over here. Weekly report 0. All your files for weekly report 0 should go there. And then weekly report 1. And then weekly report 2, and so on. In that way you keep your files organized, right? So this is weekly report 0, so I'm gonna move my weekly report over here. I'm gonna move this over here, right? And then I'm gonna put this right over here. You should do that for all your files so that you have an organized GitHub repo. Now I'm gonna close this because we don't need it anymore. And I'm going to open VS Code real quick. Okay. I'm gonna open my my GitHub repository. So I'm gonna click on Open Folder, CIS 106, and click OK. Make sure that you do this all the time. This is very important. And I'm gonna click on weekly reports and weekly report number 2 because I'm gonna make weekly report number 2. And over here, notice that after I click on the folder, this little arrow changes its position, indicating that you're working in there. So I'm gonna create a file there, and I'm gonna call it weekly report 2.md, right? Weekly report 2.md. And over here, I'm gonna put my weekly report. So I'm gonna start with my font matter, name, class, CIS 106, semester, spring 22. Okay, and then I'm gonna open my homework so that I know exactly that I'm doing things correctly. And we go homework 2, and it says that my weekly report must contain the following: a summary of the presentations. So first I'm going to create a title, weekly report 2, and then title number 2, and I'm going to call this summary of presentations, right? And then it also needs to include that's it. That's all it needs to include, summary of presentation. So okay, so the first presentation is the basics of virtualization, and then the second presentation is installing Ubuntu. And then the third presentation is what is the Raspberry Pi? What is the Raspberry Pi? Okay. Now that we have done that, we can then start going to the presentations, and I'm gonna go to module 1. So the first one, the basics of virtualization, needs to include all of this, right? So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna copy this so that I make sure that I don't miss it. I'll put it over here. Types of virtualization and anything else you find useful. Right, perfect. And then all I hit here is a screenshot of installing Ubuntu. They say no more than 5 screenshots, so that's fine. And then so what I'm gonna do to make my life easy is that I'm gonna put over here my Okay, a screenshot 1. Screenshot 2. And I'm only gonna produce 3 screenshots of this. You know, I said that the maximum was 5, but you know, if you want to, if you only want to do 1 because that's all that matters to you, then by all means go ahead. At the end of the day, this is your assignment, you know, and if you meet the criteria, you get the grade. But you should take into consideration that, you know, whatever you put in there is what is useful to you, right? I give you a baseline, but if you need to add more stuff because you find them useful to you, then you should. It helps you study. Then let's see over here in the what is the Raspberry Pi, I need to include all of this, so I'm gonna copy that and I'm gonna paste it over here. I'm doing it just so that I know that I meet the criteria, so that I know that I can get my full grade on this assignment. Okay, so now if we go over here, we go to module 1. The first presentation is what is the basics of virtualization. Right, and I need to include what is virtualization, right? Replication of hardware, and over here it says what is virtualization. So I'm gonna bold this, and I'm gonna put the answer right there. Replication of hardware to simulate virtual machines. Virtual machines. Okay. Types of virtualization. Enter. Okay. I'm gonna put a break line over here because I want this to be a paragraph of its own. If you want, you can do it like this. You can create this being a bullet point, and I'm gonna make this another bullet point, and I'm gonna bold this over here. Types of virtualization: server side, client side. Done. Anything else you find important? Let's see what else we find important over here. Let's say that you don't care about that, right? But let's say that you want that. So I'm gonna put that, I'm gonna use that, I'm gonna take a screenshot of this. Oops, sorry. Close the wrong thing. Perfect. And I'm gonna save my picture inside here. So I'm gonna go to my repository, weekly reports, weekly report 0, and I'm gonna name this Virt1, right? Okay, anything else you find important, I'm gonna delete that. vir1.png, right? And let's say that I find that important too, the different type of hypervisors, you know, I don't want to type all of this, so I'm just going to take a screenshot real quick. Save, virt2, save. Save, right? Let's minimize this over here. Benefits of virtualization, you know, over here we're gonna do a little bulleted list over here. Benefits of virtualization. So one allows running multiple OSs, right? And so on. Allows application sandboxing, right? Reduces hardware cost, right? Assuming I find nothing else important of this presentation, then I'm going to move along and work on the other presentation. And this is installing Ubuntu, right? So we have this presentation over here, installing Ubuntu, and we're going to take 3 screenshots over here that we find useful, right? So let's say this, for us, this doesn't really matter. We don't care, or particularly you don't care, but there is one particular screenshot that you care about. I don't know, let's pick one. Let's say this one, right? You care about this one. So I'm gonna name my VM1. VM1, right? 2. VM2. And then one last screenshot. Let's say this one, right? Again, I'm just doing an example here. You know, it's not like you're gonna do this verbatim. You know, I want you to actually annotate the things that are important to you, the things that you want to remember. But I'm just providing you with this video an example of how you should do this. So let's save this, and let's call this VM3. VM3.png, right? And finally, let's talk about what is a Raspberry Pi, assuming you already watched all the videos and did everything. We don't need that there. We want this over here. So we have what is a Raspberry Pi here. So different models, specs of the latest model. Here, 5 projects. What is a Raspberry Pi? Okay, so let's say I don't want to type. Okay, I don't want to type. I'm gonna take a screenshot of this. So I don't want to type, which is valid. It's totally valid. I don't get angry if if whatever you found to be useful is exactly there. I really don't mind. I would encourage you to actually understand what you're doing, understand what you're typing, but I'm not gonna blame you if you decide to just take a screenshot of whatever you find important in the presentation and use that as an answer. As long as it makes sense, because it's not like you're just gonna be cheap. Put a little space in there. Different models of the Raspberry Pi, right? You have the Raspberry Pi 4. So let's type over here. Raspberry Pi 4, Raspberry Pi 3, Raspberry Pi 0W, there is also the 0W2 that came out this year. And there is also the Raspberry Pi compute module, but that's not in the presentation, so I don't expect you to include it. Raspberry Pi 3A, A+. There is also the Raspberry Pi 2. And there is the Raspberry Pi CMP, the compute module. There is also the Raspberry Pi, the original one. Right, the very first one. Right, but if you include it all the way up to here, I'm okay with that because that's what we had in the presentation. And obviously we have the Raspberry Pi 400. Let's include that. Okay, next, the specs of the latest model. Well, we had a picture that has that already over here. So we can simply go back here and take a screenshot of this. This does the job. That has all the specifications of the Raspberry Pis over here. And it saves us some time too. I apologize that my virtual machine is slow. I have way too many applications open in the background. And not in the background of the VM, but outside of the virtual machine, and that's making the system a little slow. So I apologize ahead of time for that. We call this rasp4.png, and here. rp4 rasp4.png. Okay, let's save. And yeah, let's put a little space over here. And 5 projects you can do with the Raspberry Pi. Well, if we go back over here and we go to the final project description, there are projects specific over here that can be done with the Raspberry Pi. We can just simply copy this over here. Okay, the best thing you could do is actually research them. I recommend that. But again, it's not like I have not given you the information before, so I don't blame you if you did exactly this. Okay, and there we go. So we finish our final our report. So I can close this over here, and let's convert this to PDF now. So I'll do right click and export to PDF. Okay, we're almost done. Now we're gonna open our terminal. So we're gonna click a new terminal here. And the first thing that I wanna do is that I wanna do a pull. That's right. I wanna make sure that the information I have in GitHub and the information that I have locally in my computer matches up. Oops, Raspberry. Give me just 1 second, guys. I'm gonna restart this computer. Okay, guys, I'm back. And let's go for code. Okay, so I'm gonna do a git pull, make sure that what I have in GitHub and what I have in my local computer matches up, and then I'm gonna do a git add period git commit -m finish weekly report 2, and then git push. Now all my changes are on GitHub right now, so if I close VS Code and I open Firefox, give me 1 second. I don't know my password by heart for this account. Save. So if I go over here to my repository, notice that my files are here exactly how we did for the first one. So all I have to do is click here, and this is the URL that you're gonna give me. There you go. So you give me this URL and you give me the PDF file. And that's it. That is how you're gonna do your weekly reports in Ubuntu from this point on. Please be mindful that what changes over here is the fact that we are not uploading files manually in the web browser anymore. We are doing it via the command line. That's the only thing that really changes. And the fact that you are always gonna be working here in this folder, right? All the time. You're always gonna be working in this folder. This is the folder that you're gonna have open in VS Code all the time. Your labs go inside labs, your weekly reports going in weekly reports. And for every lab, you are gonna have a folder so that we keep our work organized. It's easier if to do everything in the class, in the course, if we keep it organized. Same thing goes for the weekly reports. And when you start working on your final project, you're gonna have a folder here for your final project. Okay, with that said, I'll see you in the next video.